welcome to our bi-weekly family check-in that we do usually in our private Facebook group. But to be honest, we just had so much fun with discussing what we could talk about tonight. We're streaming it everywhere. Obviously, I have a special guest with me as well. So before we get into bi-weekly family check-in stuff, I'd love to have you introduce yourself in case people may not be already connected to you, which seems weird, by the way, because if they're in the Teach Better family, I'm sure they know who you are. But we'll just pretend like brand new person, Sunday evening, they're here. Go crazy.
So hi, everybody. I'm Cait O'Connor. I am an English teacher in grades 9 and 12 this year in upstate New York. I love Teach Better. I'm part of the Teach Better family. I'm so excited to be here. Love talking, teaching, English, literature, social justice. So I'm excited to be here tonight.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. Yeah, I see everybody's like commenting like, oh my gosh, they're so excited you're here. So fun. These people. See, I knew you'd be excited when you saw her, guys. Here's how this went down. Oh, by the way, if you're popping in for the first time, my name's Rae Hewart. I'm a full-time 6th grade math teacher. I'm also the director of training and development for the Teach Better team. I'm a Cait fan. This is just where we're at. But we were direct messaging on Thursday for Mastery Chat. And you were like, hey, we should like totally, chat more. And I'm like, yeah, we should. Do you want to just join me in our bi-weekly family check-in this Sunday? And you were crazy enough that you said yes. So I'm just saying. But yeah, it's going to be super fun to see everyone. It's so nice to see everybody tonight. Thank you for all being here. I love the comments. Everyone's already engaging. If, by the way, if you are not normally a part of our bi-weekly family check-ins, these usually are in our private Facebook group exclusively, which, by the way, you can join and get all the details and amazing things there over at teachbettergroup.com. But we figured, hey, even though we go live every other Sunday there, why not stream a few other places just to continue to reach our family, our network. Not everybody's on Facebook. So if you're not a part of that group, welcome. You can join right now. Essentially, there are no rules or script or any plan at all for our bi-weekly family check-in. We go live every other Sunday and essentially take questions. So you guys out in our audience, you guys get to kind of run the show. So you can ask us questions about ourselves, about our roles in the classroom. You can ask us questions about Teach Better stuff. You could ask us questions that you're still working through. The most common questions we usually get are you guys that are kind of like working through hurdles in your classroom that you're still trying to overcome. So all questioning's welcome. We'd love to have you. And Cait and I are both very passionate about a lot of different things education, and would be happy to hopefully at least be able to direct you towards either a thought or a person or a reference or something that can get you thinking. So while people are hopefully taking their phone or their computer right now and typing in the first question that they're thinking about this weekend, trying to set the tone for next week, Cait, give us a little bit of information in terms of your role right now. Are you guys remote? Are you in classroom? What are you guys doing?
So we're in a hybrid situation at the moment. And so I see 25% of my students each day. So they have subgroups. They split them in half and then they split them in half again so that they're in subgroups. And I rotate seeing those students. They come in for instruction once a week and then they do the rest of their stuff online.
So you have a hybrid where you see your students once a week only.
Right. In person. And then Mondays are actually the day where the whole class meets virtually. So I see my kids I see all my kids twice a week, once in person, once at home. And then they're doing asynchronous stuff. Yeah.
I want to dive into some hybrid questions, some food for thought that I have that I'd love to discuss with you in just a second. However, somebody very, very smart just asked if you were Team Rae or Team Jeff. And for those of you watching, if you don't know what that is, Jeff Vargas and I have a massive duel that we are currently having at the Teach Better Talk podcast because we both are hosts of the podcast. We just want to know if you're Team Rae or Team Jeff. This got so ridiculous that there's actually t-shirts in the Teach Better swag store that you can go grab to rep your Team Rae shirt, because you all know you're already a Team Rae fan. So do I even have to ask you, doesn't it seem obvious what team you must be on?
I feel like this is a mean question. I don't know why. This is a really mean question.
It's a very easy question to answer.
I know you better, but I love you both. So
you're Team Rae, but you wish Jeff the best of luck.
Yeah.
Perfect. I get that. I get that. I do want the world to know that this person who posted this comment did post another comment next, but I'm refusing to show it because it doesn't support Team Rae. Brian is very smart, jumping in, saying Team Rae, of course. That's what I like to hear. And the benefit is the comment that says Team Jeff, me choosing not to show it, I have full control right now of what comments I can show. So I'm just saying that must be a thing. And yeah, so there you go. And then Lindsay, very smart, very smart. See, I'm gonna pick only the Team Rae comments right now. So
I mean, if you look in like our conversations that we have with each other, like I've definitely, and I quote, said like, you're my new favorite person at various points throughout our friendship. So
I think that's awesome.
There is proof.
I love it. It's interesting. So wait, so we can get back on track, except for I know all of you are Team Rae. So thank you for sharing your love and support, minus the one person we're ignoring. But we love you. So when it comes to hybrid, I'm glad you kind of went through your hybrid schedule, because it's funny, no matter where you are in education right now, no matter what you're doing, everybody has a different hybrid schedule. I've seen like 12 variations, and obviously they each have pros and cons, and we're all doing our best. I'm currently remote, but I'm transitioning into a hybrid schedule starting October 19th. And then obviously the Teach Better team, we've been working with districts who have been remote and actually back fully, and some that are in hybrid. So I've been lucky enough to see a lot of different teachers find the pros and cons in their hybrid schedule that has been created for them. But for mine specifically, we have like an A-B schedule that we're doing with one remote day on Wednesday. So one fully remote day on Wednesday. So all students have things to do 5 days a week. And there will always be students in my classroom at a 50%, at a 50% capacity, except for Wednesday when we are like fully remote. So that's what I'm currently moving towards and preparing for. I actually did a lot of work today, Cait, on like how I want to run that and facilitate that. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, I'm constantly like wrapping my brain around what's happening. But as far as like our quarter split model goes, I teach, I kind of have like 2 lessons going on throughout the week. So like I'll teach the live one in the room, and then there's like a floating one going on while they're at home that they're viewing in their own, on their own time, at their own pace, stuff like that.
So I was gonna ask you that. Do you have students who are fully remote, so you never see them?
I actually have, like, I teach 5 periods, and I have 1 period that's a full remote section. So I meet with them virtually on their day, and they're still in the quarter split model. So like I meet a quarter of them each day. Okay,
so all your remote students were moved to 1 class hour. And then that was the class hour that then, no matter what day it is, like you're on the rotating schedule with them.
Yeah, and I have some students who are like mixed in with my my hybrid kids who are full remote, or like, and then I teach 2 grades. So like I have a few like sprinkled in here and there that are on my laptop while I'm doing my live stuff. And it's actually like, it's a really effective way of teaching me how to multitask, and sort of, like experiment with the modalities that go on the online screen. Like I really, like, I've learned so much about like the functions of Google Meet, the functions of Google Classroom. Like it's been super helpful in that respect.
Well, and it's interesting. I really would love, and those of you listening, please comment, because I don't necessarily want to spend time talking about something that you guys are not interested in. But for me, the majority of the questions I'm getting are related to what you're saying is, if I go into hybrid, how am I managing it all? And so I have done a lot of work in this area, not only for myself, but obviously coaching other teachers. You just shared a lot of different ideas. And I think truly, like, you went into a number of different elements there that we could break up and dissect and actually talk about, like logistics and like student schedules and everything like that. So if you guys are interested, please comment. We'd love to share more of that. I too am in charge of students that are fully remote, as well as the students that are in my classroom and in the hybrid model. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and the worst thing you can have is feeling like you're running like 3 different school systems. Like, when you can find a way to blend these things together and not do 3 times the work, but continue to do the same amount of work in a different way as an educator, you know, powering through the stress of 2020, like, we would love to help share any tips or tricks. But I do want to celebrate. Brian says he got through his first content grid, which means he got through his first unit. We're so excited for you. Brian, he says he's Zooming with students twice a week. In my setup, because I'm also using the grid method in my classroom, I'm getting a conference with students at least 3 times a week, and it's going super well. I love that I'm able to check student understanding through conferencing. So super duper fun. And yes, I'm just going to keep showing Team Rae stuff. All right. Brian says, being virtual and working in the grid, how many teacher check-ins are you putting into your grid? So Cait, to confirm, you're not using the grid method. I know you're doing a number of different great things with your students, but you're not using a grid, are you?
For myself, like for my own sanity, I use like a modified version of the grid method, like in my planning, like in my brain. But I haven't yet introduced a lot of that to students. But for me, it's kind of always in the background as far as like how I plan my week.
I love it. It's funny because I was just voxing with Joe. Sorry, Joe, I'm totally calling you out if you're in here listening. Sorry, Joe. But he was messaging me, and I felt like I probably shouldn't have said his name, because now I'm going to like totally dissect his message in Voxer. But his message was like, he felt guilt not using the grid. Like, we had worked this summer, him and I had worked this summer on like developing a grid. And then he kind of went through like this period of time where he got into the school year and he was like, whoa, I'm not ready. Like, he's like, there's too many moving pieces. I'm not sure I can do it. And then in his Vox to me today, he was kind of like, I think I'm going to try like a variation. And I just want to put this out there in case any of you need to hear it. Like, there is no shame or guilt with how you are doing things right now in your classroom. Like, every educator is doing their best. And so if you're trying to be progressive, good for you. But trying to be progressive could be like implementing 1 student voice or choice activity this week. If that's what you like, if you've met your capacity, like 1 small little sprinkle of something is plenty. Or if you're not ready to use the grid method, like, use it in your planning. Like, just use it using that best practice, but maybe don't implement all of the pieces. Or like something that I did, guys, when COVID hit and I didn't know what I was doing, I implemented like week-long grid. So it was like, essentially, if those that use the grid method, it was like 1 level at a time. You know what? Because I couldn't plan the next week because there was too much changing. And so you're just implementing like maybe 2 days at a time or whatever. So there is like no concern with that. I love all these educators that are trying things, but if you're trying something and you're not ready to completely dive in, like, there's no shame in that, no matter what topic it is. It could be anything from completely transforming your classroom with mastery learning or like implementing music in your classroom. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. You like get involved as much as you can.
Yeah.
So I just think it's important. For Brian's comment about teacher check-ins, Brian, I am implementing conferencing in my grids about the same as I was before. I have about 2 spots in every level where I'm doing some sort of teacher check-in. Usually it's on a really important teacher concept like really important part of the content in the level. So if I have 1A through E in the first level, it might be like I'm checking in with them at B or C. And then I'm also always checking in with students at the end of the level. Like they essentially take like an end of level formative assessment where we can be like, hey, you got it, you can level up, or, ooh, we got to go back and make sure we shore up these gaps before we move up to more challenging content. And so those two like conferences, it doesn't mean I'm only checking their understanding on one small piece. But Brian, if you check students' understanding on C, you can also check their understanding on B and A as well in that same conference. Like I'm still having students confirm they understand things before moving forward, but conferencing, it's like 2 per level. I don't know if that makes sense. Are you doing a lot of conferencing, Cait?
Yeah. The virtual model kind of really gives the opportunity for that, as does the smaller class sizes. So I get to check in with students a lot more frequently about like what they do and don't understand. And I sort of, like I said, I go through like a modified version of that, like that grid almost like throughout a period each day, you know, like we level up a little bit as we get there. But also something that I was just thinking about is like that quarter split model where I'm teaching the same, it's basically like I go through a single class period a week, right? Because I'm teaching the same content 4 times. By the end of the week, I actually like for growth purposes, I really love it because by the end of the week, I've refined the model of the lesson to perfection. Like I'll walk out of work on Friday and be like, I did so well today. And like, I'm able to sort of trace my reflections on how that went. And also watch the students get really cognitively involved in something in real time. So the smaller sizes of classes that I have are super helpful in like seeing kids' brains actually start reeling and working.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially with the hybrid or remote setting, if you can control students' learning environments or how they're taking assessments, the only way, and I'm not saying this to like make everybody worried, I just really feel like the only way to know what my students know is to talk to them. Like I have to talk to them. And in class, it was easy because I could walk over and be like, hey, Cait, how's life, right? Like, and I could check your understanding and it'd be no big deal. But like in a remote setting or even in a hybrid setting, I can't totally base your score on an assessment that you took virtually to actually best like share what you know. So you have to find a way to talk to your students. I was just talking about this on my Instagram stories. I'm like, guys, if you haven't figured it out, start asking questions because it's the best way that you're going to be able to not only connect with your learners, but like get to know your learners and figure out like where their gaps are, but also what are their areas of success that you can like celebrate. Everybody needs that.
Something that I started this year and that I'm going to do forever, I've decided, is I sort of, so with all my lessons last week, I put the concepts of like, I'll put like 4 terms or something on the board that we're going to cover in that period or that I hope to cover in that period. And I literally make the students write the essential questions out of what they see. So I'm like, okay, look at the things you see on the board. I want you to ask the questions today. Like what do you have that you need to know about the things that you see in front of you? And and then by the end of the period, we reflect on like, did we get this one? Did we get this one? Did we get this one? And it's so much more empowering for them because they're thinking right away, oh, I don't know this. I need to fill in this knowledge gap. And it's, oh my God, it's been like insane. It's powerful.
I love that. And you just combine now like a number of other things. It's not just about talking to your students, but having that facilitated reflection. And through that, you can set goals and talk about the next time you're going to see them or what they might want to go through for the rest of the week. Like what questions can you solve even when you're not in the classroom? I mean, the reflection that we can facilitate with students right now is outstanding if you can figure out how that fits in your classroom. And it may not fit the same way in Cait's classroom as it does in yours. I mean, it doesn't fit the same as mine. But if you find ways to integrate those data-supported strategies to support and engage our learners, we are going to power through 2020 with crazy success people. I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have my 9th graders, like, I don't know, something about kind of being on the cusp of middle school. Like kids are way more vocal about what they need at that age, I think. So I see a lot of my students be like, I don't get this help, so that there's no shortage of like, I'm not afraid to not know stuff. And that really makes teaching for me a lot more fun because our work is just constant investigating at that point, together. So, and I'm always modeling, like, if I don't know, I will find you someone who does.
And that's what we say to each other, right? When we're talking about all of you right now at home, like messaging and engaging with this video, Cait and I are not promising that we know everything. Even when I'm doing professional development for teachers, I'm not promising I know everything, but I sure know that I'm connected to enough people and I have enough strategies that I can connect you with someone that can help you or with a book that can help you or something, because that's a skill in and of itself to be a dot connector. And when we can do that for our students, it's incredibly impactful. Yeah. I do want to give a special shout out to Joe that's listening. Hey, Joe, love you. Thanks for letting me call you out. That's awesome. Lindsay Titus, who I am such a fan of, says, love the reminder, Rae, so important to start small and simple and strategic. Lindsay, you remind me of that all the time. So I'm glad in some way me like repeating your words back to you helped. Keep it focused and aligned to your students in the classroom. And ain't that the truth? Jessica has a great comment here. She says, I'm adapting the grid to a scale back version because I felt like it was too much right now. Totally understand. So we're taking a step back, and I think I'm going to do a level a week. It's worked well for me the last year, but this year is feeling a little overwhelming and moving pieces. Thanks for encouragement. Yeah, no guilt, Jessica. I love that you're choosing to do that. It's a great choice, and especially if it best serves your students, like go crazy. Cait, have you ever used Seesaw?
No. It's a tool that I'm still exploring. So like I have a list of tools that like this year are my goal to learn. Seesaw is like on one of the top things on that list. But.
It's so funny. Seesaw has this like bad rep of like only being an elementary school tool. And so as a middle school teacher, I'm like, I don't get it because I don't see anything elementary about it. Unless you're saying like elementary, like it's an easy to use tool. Mm-hmm. But I personally, I'm like, it works great for middle school. So for you, high school, I'm like, go crazy. I hope you use it.
Listen, I don't believe in aging, especially like age grouping, like technology, because I've seen seniors literally like fight, like battle over Kahoot, like get enraged at each other.
Like a kid tool too.
Yeah. Or like even with like Bunsy, I used to like really use a lot of that, especially teaching ENL because it's super interactive. Like I'd have like high school kids being like, look at this cool thing I animated. And I'm like, yeah, you did that, like, yeah. So it's all about how much as a teacher, how much you hype it to your kids too. And some tools are just not good tools. Like, like you can hype it all you want, but it's not going to be, sometimes it's just clunky, but like, it's all about how you know how to use it. Because if you model how to use it, then the kids are going to be like, okay, like I'm in, and I have basically an IT person here in the room to help me. Yep. But I don't believe in age groups as far as like, with like, appropriate reason, but like as far as like using certain educational technology tools, like it can be fun if you make it fun.
Right. Completely. And it's also about explaining to your learners why you're using it. Like I had somebody this week, I was on a phone call with an educator who was talking to me about Seesaw. And by the way, just to clarify for everybody listening, like we aren't affiliated with Seesaw. It's a tool I use. I use the free version. Do not pay for stuff. I love my free version Seesaw. I've been using it for years. But somebody was asking me a question like, oh, I know I'm not using, the sentence they said to me on the phone was like, I know I'm not using Seesaw to the best of its capabilities. Do you know if it can do like X, Y, and Z? And I was like so embarrassed, but I was trying to be honest on the phone. I was like, I just want to confirm, like I've used Seesaw the same way for like 3 years and I know nothing else about it. Like I know nothing about the cool features. It probably does 100 things. Guys, I use one feature and I love it. So I am so confident that like my students could dive further into Seesaw and find so many amazing things, or all of you. I'm confident you guys could teach me about Seesaw. Even Brian in his comments, he's like, oh, so I provide feedback in Seesaw. And my first thing I thought was like, oh, how? Like, is there special ways you provide feedback? Do you just type in the comments? Like, I know of one thing off the top of my head that I'm like, oh, I could provide Seesaw feedback maybe. But again, like I use it for student goal setting and reflection. And so I really use it as like a documentation resource in a student online portfolio. But I love seeing the new ways people use tech tools to support their learners. So super awesome. This is somebody talking to us about how they are doing their hybrid model. It says we're on a hybrid model, but I have one full remote section. Okay, Kate, similar to you. I'll often put them all in their own breakout room, and they're talking about using Zoom, and then check-ins with students as they work. There is even an I need help button that sends them a pop-up notification to my screen saying the students needs help. This is super helpful in one-on-one conferencing virtually. That's awesome. Kate, I know we both use Google Meets, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So I've seen like a bunch of features with Zoom that have been super successful. I know a bunch of teachers that are using WebEx, again, similar to Zoom, super successful. I know Kate and I are using Google Meets. So depending on your platform, it's kind of funny. I feel like a lot of people have been asking how they're running their conferencing. But depending on what platform you use, like that has to be identified first, because then we can give you all the tips and tricks that like go with that platform. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have you used Zoom before?
I for like webinars and stuff, but because of its like security issues, I know that it's been at the schools that I worked in during this whole situation. Both schools that I worked in were Google for Ed schools, so they specifically said like Google Meet because of the features that allow like student security and like the only in the domain stuff. So I use Zoom for like webinars with other teachers or like professional things, but I've never really used it for ed. No.
Yeah, no, I've used it obviously for a bunch of stuff with the Teach Better team. We do a lot over Zoom, but class-wise, I've used Google Meets this entire time. So it's been super interesting. I did use WebEx though when we first got shut down, because that was the initial platform that was being encouraged by the district. But we've seen a lot of success with Google. So we're going to keep on trekking, and everything is updated so quick. It seems like all the time there's something new that I'm learning about. So I'm really enjoying that so far. Brittany's jumping in here. I feel like all I do is like interact with Brittany on social media. Do you ever interact with Brittany?
I think I have, yeah.
Okay, I encourage you, like literally every platform, I get messages or notifications from Brittany. I love when I see her pop in and I'm like, ooh, what she's on? Ooh, Facebook this time. Okay, interesting. I love it. She says, happy Sunday. It's going to be a good week. Speaking of conferences, how does that look? Are students doing a problem in front of you, or is it just reflecting and chatting? I'm finding when students get to the conference, they're not doing very much of the notes, practice, or activity. So let's talk about that. That's a super good question. I'm going to take the chat off so you guys can see us as we're talking. But Brittany, really, really good question. I do want to talk about that. So can you tell me a little bit, Kate, like how are you running conferences? Is there anything you're hoping to like transition into as you move forward? What's your plan?
So when I'm doing like our virtual Mondays, for instance, right, like those are like, I guess you could consider them conferences. Or even when I'm doing like the remote only students in the Google Meets, like I try to keep it like super low stakes for them, just so that they feel like that's a space where they can kind of unpack a little bit. Sure. So we do like, I'll come up with like a linguistics challenge, for example. Like I'll say like, find me 5 antonyms for this word, or here's a wordscape. Make as many words as you can out of these 6 letters. Stuff like that. And sometimes I'll incentivize it for like, okay, like and I'll differentiate the incentives, like who the top 5 people with the whatever get like 2 points on their homework for this week. So it gives everyone an opportunity to like still be learning and thinking, but also just like hang out for a second. And then in person, we haven't really done much by way of conferencing, like in the official style yet. But like I said, I kind of feel almost like my class sizes are so small that it feels like a conference. Like I kind of just use the first 5 to 10 minutes of class as like let's just see how things are going.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, this has been being said for 6 months now, but like the ultimate goal, right, besides getting our students to learn is like to get them to be people first. Mm-hmm. So even like, I'm not, you know, ever going to call specific students out, like, but sometimes I'll see kids like submitting their Google Classroom assignments at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And I'll just be like, hey, everyone, we self-care in this classroom, right? Like we're going to bed at a decent hour, right? Like just like general, like we're being human beings before we enter this building. So those are my kind of ways in to be like, how are we? Right. That matters more than anything else.
Sure. No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That has to be where we start. It's so important. I feel like I could talk on conferencing forever. So I'm going to like word vomit as much as I can, Brittany. And then Cait, like feel free to cut me off with questions or whatever. Like I want to make sure I'm clear. For those of you who are looking to conference on content in terms of like student understanding, I'm doing a lot of what Cait's doing in terms of like relationship building. It's so important to start. Cait, some of the examples you gave, I'm like, ooh, that sounds so fun. I would totally love to do that in my classroom. When I'm conferencing with students on content, when we were in the classroom, students would do like a problem or two on like a paper exit slip, and then they would like conference with me either one-on-one or in a small group. Because I don't know if that's going to be possible in a hybrid model, I'm not banking on it, but I've been doing a lot of options for conferencing right now in remote that I plan on continuing in the same way for hybrid. And obviously I'll keep you updated, guys, as I get like a week in, I'm going to be like, okay, I totally changed it again, right? So here's how I operate it. In my grid, students are always like, every box is kind of the same where I'm introducing an idea, they're practicing an idea, and then somehow they're like confirming that they understood the idea. Sometimes after they've confirmed they understood something, they have a teacher conference. And like I noted earlier with Brian's comment, I do that like 2 times in a level-ish, and I'm saying that totally roundabout. Students like need to conference with me. So 3 times a week right now in our remote only learning space, I'm essentially live on a Google Meet the entire class hour. We start the first 5 to 10 minutes kind of all together. We do some relationship building stuff. We goof off. I really love this song game we've been playing recently. And then we go through our checklist of like what our activities are for the day. And one of the things always on the checklist is to work on their grid. One of the things always on the checklist is to do seesaw, all that stuff. I could go into that more if you're interested. Brittany, I know you already know what checklist I'm talking about, so I'm not going to worry about you. So when they work on their grid and they hit a checkpoint that they need a conference, they just pop back over to that Google Meet. So that Google Meet exists Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If it's a Tuesday or Thursday, they just like know that they need a teacher conference the following day. So it's super easy. And they just come in as needed to that Google Meet. And I'm looking at their tracking page, or I've also had them just put in the comments, like specifically what they need that conference on. And I'm doing either one-on-one or small group conferences. I'm currently working with a student teacher on managing this, and she is killing it. But for me, we have this like rough rule that between like no more than 4 or 5 students should be in a conference. So if you have 6 students that need a conference, I'm breaking it up 3 and 3. So I might be like, hey, Cait, Brittany, Jamie, you guys are going to set a 10-minute timer and come back in 10 minutes. But Livia, Lindsay, and Brian, you're going to stay here and we're going to conference right now. So we're doing a lot of like set a timer and come back as needed, depending on where we're at, which is working super well. If you're in Zoom, you can like put them in a breakout room. Like there's a lot of different things for me.
Yeah, so that kind of happens for us too. And I'm thinking of examples as you talk, but like last week, for instance, we were talking about like what anecdotes are and like how they work in storytelling. And so I kind of mini lessoned it. Like I didn't do any teaching from like actual like verbal like spitting lecture at them for like more than 5-10 minutes. And then I said, okay, well, you're going to read an anecdote from this folder on your own, and we're going to conference about it. Like, is there any main ideas you don't understand? Do you need more time to read? Like, that's a conference question. Like, I said, I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes. And like, if we need to negotiate that we need less or more, we're going to do that. But like those smaller classes kind of act as conference spaces. But when I was in another district last year, when this all started happening, like in March, just like a month in, we had to have students start their college or finish their college essays. So, I was teaching 11th grade, and I had students, what I ended up doing, because it was a lot more fluid, like you could just kind of like, there was a schedule, but like if you needed to meet with them additionally, like there was freedom to do so. I had kids come in to a Google Meet and schedule it on Google Calendar and have them come into a Google Meet with me, either 2 or 1 student at a time, and talk to me about their college essays. So like I would comment on the Google Drive and I'd be like, did you see this? Do you know what I mean by that? Did you see this? Do you know what I mean by that? I think this area needs improvement. So like we'd talk about like some ideas, and they'd be like, I really don't know how to develop this part, and we'd literally do like writing conferencing. So that was really helpful. And like if I'm going to do conferences, I think like one-on-ones are really helpful because kids are more, vulnerable with their work that way. Right. But I like conferences that are like 2 or 3 students, because then they're not in that like content area echo chamber, especially in English, where like a kid could come to me and be like, I don't know what to do. And I'm just spitting ideas at them, and they think they have to accept them because I am the teacher. But if somebody else in their peer group says something, then they can kind of negotiate that as part of their work. And it comes from a more authentic and like leveled out place, without that pressure of feeling like I have to do this because my teacher told me to. It then becomes like, oh no, like, Andrea gave me this really cool idea, so maybe I'll implement it. Or maybe I'll twist it in my own direction, so they feel less pressure to perform the way that they think they're expected to, and like do it the way that someone else gave them insight and then use their own spin on it. So those conferences have been super helpful last year. And I think as far as when like developing writers, I'm going to come up with something like that this year as well.
Well, and that would be great. Yeah. And during the conferences, I think you can ask a variety of different things to get students talking. I also like small group conferencing. It's super helpful. Brittany, I was going to tell you, with the type of conferencing that you choose to do, we vary up our conferencing depending on the content and what I feel like I need to know from the student to feel confident that they can move forward. So sometimes with the student, if I feel like I'm getting to know them, it might be 1 question. Sometimes it's 2. More often than not, I'm sharing some sort of screen with them and writing on it. For me, I'm fortunate enough to have a tool that I can share my screen to, and I can like physically write on it, which is obviously very easy. My amazing student teacher hasn't had that luxury. So she's actually her name's Sam, but Sam's been like sharing a Google Doc. So it's a white background, and she's been using a Chrome extension to just write on it. So she's like writing with her mouse pad because she's a genius. So that's been super cool. But sometimes, Brittany, it's like, hey, pull out a question from your packet that you should have done for practice. Oh, you didn't do it? No worries. Take a second right now and do it. Let's talk through the answer. Brittany, I just taught my students about mute and next. So in conferences, when we were in class, we use mute and next to facilitate discussion. And so next meant if I say, great, Cait, next, it means you can still participate in the discussion, but you can't be the next one to talk. So if I say next to Cait, somebody else has to talk before Cait can jump back in. If I tell Cait, good job, mute, then Cait cannot speak for the rest of the conference. So we like make this a funny game of like how fast you can get muted, and also like the frustration of being muted when you know the answer. But there's been a number of different things we've done just between like doing problems together, having them do problems and share their answer, or having them go through a problem together, but me muting or nexting them as we go. One of my favorite things, Brittany, that we did do, and I think, Cait, this could work well in your class, it sounds like you already do this, is simply when you have a small group, challenging other students to ask questions to other students. So it's like, hey, Brittany, can you ask Livia a question that would have been relevant to this quiz? And sometimes it's a math question, right? You create a math problem. Other times it's like, hey, what's the rule for when you add decimals? And like, then the student has to say, oh, when you add decimals, you have to line it up, right? You line up those decimal points. Or when we do that, they can also say skip and it goes to the next person to their right. So again, these are all things that need to be facilitated, but you're doing things in a safe, I really like to keep it like a funny environment where like giggling. It's so much more fun to giggle through conferences because learning should be fun. So I always love those.
Yeah. Sometimes like, and I'm going to totally get into something that's like way off the rails right now. But like, even with that whole, like with conferences or with small meetings or with large group meetings, like it's with large groups, it's really easy, especially on the Google Meet. And this is true in the in-person classroom too. It's really easy in a room of 30 kids for like one kid to kind of hide and get lost, in the space and like kind of be comfortable and safe that way. In smaller groups, I find that kids are more comfortable to be who they are and like get things wrong, and kind of bounce off of each other a little bit. Mm-hmm. And the other part of that too is like, you mentioned like making it fun and making it like they're sitting there and they're doing like actively working, there's this whole like, and it's been going on, but like there's this whole discussion of like, do we make our kids put their cameras on, going on, right now?
Sure. We've talked about it here in a biweekly family check-in about cameras for sure.
Like, a camera doesn't tell me that a kid is learning anything, it just tells me that they're there. But there are so many more creative ways to do that with our kids. Like I'll tell them, rather than just be like, type here in the chat so that I know you're sitting at your computer, I'll be like, the first person to find me the answer to this question, and then they're all racing to tab out on Google, and then like all of them typing in the chat at once and then being like, oh man, I wasn't first, but like that tells me you're in front of your screen and you're not doing laps around your house, waiting for me to shut up. And you're cognitively engaged in something that day or that minute that, and that's the point. Like you're learning a thing.
Have you used the nod feature in Google Chrome?
I haven't used the nod feature, but I like I said, I really try to kind of like gamify my hey, are you here check-ins, I'll even like I've had like on my first week, I did an about me Kahoot where I had kids just kind of like guessing like random facts about me, and like they were doing that from their house because we were full remote. Like all my class periods were full remote for the first 2 weeks, and it was really successful. Like the kids like, obviously they're going to be like, I don't know the answers to that, so I just met you. But like guessing is the point. And like, they were all doing it. They were all engaged. And like, I knew that they were sitting in front of the screen, and at least engaging in content.
For people listening who use Google Meet, the nod, there's so many Chrome extensions, guys, but the nod feature is really good if, I just want to preface, if you have it downloaded as an extension and all your students have it downloaded as an extension, essentially they can send reactions similar to Zoom. My favorite is the party one. So I tell my students that rather than the clapping, we always do the party one where they're like spitting confetti. It's really fun. And it's just another way to like engage with your learners that doesn't require them to be in front of the camera in terms of like seeing their face, but they can react to you using funny emojis that, I don't know, that's how I keep myself entertained. So why would they keep themselves entertained that way too? Yeah. I love it. So fun. I was seeing Brian and Livia were having a conversation around Seesaw and the questions students answer when they're doing goal setting reflection. I won't lie, Livia and Brian, don't be mad at me. I changed mine to 4 questions. 3 was what I was using. I changed it to 4. Here's why. I added a question. I want to know what the students were working on. I want to know how well they understood it. And I want to know their goal for their next work session. That was the original 3. I added 1 more, and it was, what was the classroom goal? So then they're just documenting, like, the classroom goal was, 1B, but I'm on 1D. They're documenting, like, what was the classroom goal? They have to acknowledge it, and also what they were doing. So just so you know, a little switch for me, but you don't necessarily have to. It was just something that I was enjoying. We're getting so many comments still, so many great people that are just celebrating the fun and the insight. I so appreciate that all of you are here and celebrating with us. We're going to do a last call for questions. We've been live for almost an hour. Cait and I are happy to help in any way possible. By the way, Jeff Kaplan, so good to see you. I miss you, my friend. But we just want to make sure that we're respectful of your time and you guys are all relaxing and hopefully enjoying the rest of your weekend before we kick off a fun week tomorrow. Cait, any piece of information that if somebody was just popping in right now, hitching the last few minutes of this video, what would you want them to take away after interacting with you on a Sunday evening that can really set the tone for maybe something they're going to chew on or something they can consider for the rest of their week?
Just handle every interaction that you have with all the grace that you can. I have kids emailing me right now that I don't understand this, or I'm working and also going to school and I'm really having trouble balancing. And my answer is really just, okay. Mm-hmm. And they're looking to be accountable and diligent and asking for extra time. And I'm just okay, because again, people first, just I'm a person and, Google malfunctions on me in the middle of class constantly, or I share all the stuff in the classroom that the kids are going to work on with them as they come in. So maybe I'll leave or forget, one student or not click their name or check it off. And they're patient with us, they're being patient with us. So we owe that back to them. And even if they're not, because 14-year-olds can and will look at you really, you don't know how to do that. But, it's because they want normal just as much as anyone else. Mm. Even the kids who hate being in the school building just want that experience to feel like it always has. Sure. In some way. So if they're taking it out on you, it's not because it's you, it's because you're the nearest adult and you're the nearest person that they perceive can do something about it. Sure. So that constant reminder of nothing is personal and everyone is a first year teacher right now, is something that I keep really at the front of my mind, and just having a sense of humor about it. With my kids, I'll be oh, the internet hates me today. I'm so sorry. I know, we're in our moments together. And I experience them with the kids sometimes, it'll happen in the middle of class where something will go wrong on my slides or whatever. And she's shut off. But what is there to do except just laugh about it, And I tell them the same thing. Handle yourselves with grace. If something's not working, tell me when you can. And that carries us I'm literally at this point living an hour at a time. Sometimes I feel like my lessons are written on an Etch-a-Sketch, but it is what it is.
You're right. No, it's so important. And, that doesn't only apply to our students and ourselves, but our families, our stakeholders, and everybody in between. Your administration, everybody needs a little bit of a break right now. So it's important that you are constantly responding with a service mindset. how can I help you?
Yeah.
How are we going to move through this together? So important. Livia threw in a comment here about asking their students if their effort for the day was today's best. Love that reference, Livia, to the Teachers Deserve It book. I will tell you, Livia, that has been probably the most fun thing for me to speak on from the Teachers Deserve It book, is like referring to the section about today's best. And it's actually something I just wrote a blog with Dave Burgess that will be coming out later this week, I think, where we kind of added like another layer of today's best, because it's gotten such positive people like sharing that they really feel like accepting that, you know, today's best mentality of it's not about giving 100% every day. It's not about trying to burn yourself out and then you look at the clock and it's only 11:30 in the afternoon, but you're really just looking and you're like, I am just going to give today's best. And if today's best in that moment is 90%, you just give today's best. Or if it's 60% because you're really struggling with things, like that's what you're just going to give. And so I love that you use that reference. I challenge you all to use it with your students. I love that that's been something that's been, you know, easy to resonate with, and hopefully that new kind of like spin that we're putting with the blog coming out, I hope you all enjoy. I do want to tell you, Cait, I have had so many conversations about this idea of being new teachers all over again. And I want to leave us with a little thought, if you don't mind, about that. And then, Cait, I'm going to remember we have an outro of a video that we are going to throw up here. Cait and I were like, can we get through this live video together and remember the outro? I think we can do it. So here is my food for thought for all of you teachers who are using the phrase like, oh my gosh, we're first year teachers again. I just want to tell you, first off, I totally get it. Like that phrase was a phrase that I used, gosh, like all summer long when people were like, oh, we're going back in August. And I'm like, yep, we're just going to be first year teachers again. We're going to feel like we're like walking around in the dark, like, you know, trying to feel what to do. And that's just going to be what it is. And then I had this realization in a conversation in late July that I really want you to think about, everybody listening, I want you just to consider if you're feeling like a new teacher. So this phrase of like feeling like you're working longer than you've ever worked before, feeling like you're struggling and like needing to be a learner all over again, feeling like a new teacher because you don't know where to turn to because you need help, all these things, feeling like you don't have enough things in your toolkit because that's what a new teacher felt like, right? Like I get that, but here's what I want you to think about. When you were a new teacher, you were walking into school and you had your new teacher clothes on, right? And you were just like trying to keep your head above water. Everything was scary, like it is now. You were really trying to serve your students the best way possible, like you are now. There are so many similarities. But what isn't the same is the empty toolbox that you used to have. Like the empty toolbox where anytime there was a teacher like strategy, anytime there was a mega fail in your classroom and you're like, I'll never do that again. And you threw it in your teacher toolbox, that at any point you were like, okay, I'm collecting information. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be better. That didn't go away because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So you might feel like things are scary. You might feel like you're walking in blind sometimes, but you're not a first year teacher right now because you've worked years. Some of you have worked decades collecting tools, not maybe the perfect tech tool for right now situation, but you have been working to collect tools about how to support students, how to teach content you've interacted with before, how to positively support parents, how to interact with colleagues, how to work with administration. You've been collecting tools in that teacher toolbox your entire career. So challenge yourself, empower yourself to instead of thinking, oh, I'm a new teacher, I'm just like completely at a loss. You're not at a loss. You have so many things going for you. You just have a few pockets of your life that wouldn't normally be this gray and fuzzy, but right now it is just like icky mold that you find on fruit that you need to throw away, right? Like it's all icky, but you move forward and you know what to do moving forward. And so I want to challenge all of you as you're struggling, being like, gosh, it's so hard. This is challenging. Like it's so challenging. And Cait was just talking about giving yourself grace and giving others grace. but don't you dare start thinking that toolbox is empty, because you have a lot of resources in there, and acknowledging that there are a lot of resources in there is going to be the first step to maybe going back and opening it up and seeing what's in there that you can use right now. So I just want to challenge all of you to kind of think about what's in your toolbox and what you can do moving forward to maybe make this week more successful. What concept that did you learn like in the past 2 years that you threw in that teacher toolbox that maybe you haven't thought to bring back up again in your classroom? And some of it could be, Cait, like you've mentioned, like building relationships with students or interacting with parents, or even just knowing to give others grace. Like you've learned that because you've learned that we need to just do what we can right now to support each other. And that's not necessarily something that came your first year. Maybe you learned that your second or third year. So enjoy all the tools, I guess is my point.
Yeah.
Cait, I want to thank you for joining our bi-weekly family check-in, a whole hour live talking shop. I so appreciate you and all that you do. Cait, I do want to make sure that people follow you on Twitter. So I want to stick up your, please go connect with Cait on Twitter. She's doing such amazing things. I love that you are such an advocate for students' needs in a number of different ways. And you're so smart. I feel like every time I talk to you, there's like a new resource or a new book that I have to go check out. And I just so appreciate you being in the Teach Better family. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So fun. For everybody else, do not go yet, because apparently we have a cool outro. I don't know how it's going to work, but cross your fingers and we will see y'all again soon.